from PRX.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and friends beyond the binary, it's time for the podcaster who's here. I'm here to help. I'm here to take your mind off of stuff. I'm here to go off topic and not make much sense, be silly, and do my best to keep you company, but you don't got to listen to me because it's time for Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. Hey, Scoots, before we get moving here, I just want to let you know, Sleep With Me is built on a foundation of empathy and compassion, of dignity and respect, of not being perfect, but of trying, progress, not perfection. And that means supporting the members of our community, is supporting you, listeners. So there's resources. If you're having a tough time right now in this moment, there's resources right in our show notes you can take advantage of right now if you need them to reach out and connect and get right in this moment. So please use those resources. And it's also about supporting the members of our community. Right now, that means saying Black Lives Matter. That means saying that Black mental health matters. And that means working towards a solution. So there's going to be links to organizations you can connect with to be a part of the solution, to help the members of our community. Because it's important. Because when I say I'm here, your good night's sleep's important, that comes with responsibility to the rest of our community as well. So that's it. And here's a couple of ways I'm able to bring you this podcast twice a week. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots, and I just wanted to check in and say, if you get a lot out of the podcast, I know this is a tough time. This is 2020. Boy, has it been a year. But I've kept this podcast here on a regular basis because of listener support, because of the listeners that support the sponsors and the listeners that are patrons. And I really, really appreciate it. And, only a small percentage of people really need to support the show for it to be free for everybody. But the people that are in a position to support the sponsors or support the show on Patreon, and people that listen to it on a regular basis. So if you're in a position where you could pay for a free podcast, you say, I get so much out of Sleep With Me. It puts me to sleep 5 nights a week. Maybe I should, wait a second. Maybe I should pay for a free podcast. Now that's a rebellious act to say, I'm going to pay for something that's free so it can stay free for whoever else needs it. But it's also an affirmation. You say, I get a lot out of this show and it means a lot to me. That's the kind of conversations I hear from patrons. And if you're not in a place to do so, that's a great thing. The patrons are here and they have your back. It's really a beautiful thing. So here's the questions. Are you in a good place right now where you could afford to pay for a free podcast, or say, well, I have this subscription to something streaming. I don't even use it. I use Sleep With Me 10 times as much. If you could support the show $10, $20, $5 a month, you get value out of it. There are a lot of cool, sweet extras, but that's not why, when I hear from the patrons, that's not why they support the show. They support it because it does a lot for them, and it gives them peace of mind knowing that when they support the podcast, they're not just supporting it for them, they're supporting it for thousands of other people. So if you listen to Sleep With Me a lot, like more than twice a week, you're in a position to do so, and you're a rebel. You say, I am so rebellious, I'm going to pay for a free podcast. Whoop-dee-doo. And after I do that, I'm going to skip to the loo. After you sign up as a patron, please skip to the loo. Every time you go to the loo, skip to the loo. If you feel like skipping to the loo, and you can, go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/patron, support the show, and then skip to the loo. And you say, you deserve it. You deserve it. And if you're already a patron, skip to the loo. Holy moly. Do you do a lot for me and all the listeners, and I appreciate it. Thanks so much. All right, everybody. It's time for me to talk about that bed that I'm in every single night. Oh boy. With the winter, I say, I'm going to be comfortable these long winter nights with my Helix. My brother just got a Helix. Him and his wife have been telling me all about it. Listener after listener, friend, family member, everybody loves their Helix bed because they've got a bed for everybody. So just think about the bed you're in right now. Is it really comfortable? How is it a bed you've had in your family for a while? You say, well, I don't even know where we got this bed, because it's time for you to upgrade. You deserve it. Helix makes personalized mattresses right here in America, and they're shipped straight straight to your door with free no-contact delivery, free returns, and a 100-night sleep trial. To choose a mattress, Helix made a quiz that just takes 2 minutes to complete, matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you. So if you like a mattress that's really soft or firm, or if you sleep on your side or your back or your stomach, or you sleep really hot, with Helix, there's a specific mattress for each and everybody's unique taste. And that's for me. I sleep on my side. I sleep on my stomach. I guess partially I don't really sleep on my back too much, but I sleep hot. And I want something that's comfortable. So I took the quiz. That's how I ended up with the Helix Dusk. And it is absolutely mind-blowing. I got the Dusk Luxe. It's the best mattress I've ever owned. I love Helix, but you don't have to just take my word for it. Helix was awarded the #1 best overall mattress pick of 2020 by GQ, Wired Magazine, and Apartment Therapy. Just go to helixsleep.com/sleep and take their 2-minute sleep quiz, and they'll match you with a customized mattress that'll give you the best sleep of your life. Right, Mystery Bard?
Just go to helixsleep.com/sleep. Take their 2-minute sleep quiz. The customized mattress will give you the best sleep of your life. And you'll be saying, gee whiz, Helix Sleep.
Thanks, Mr. Bard. They have a 10-year warranty, and you get to try it out for 100 nights risk-free. They even pick it up if you don't love it, but you will. Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners at helixsleep.com/sleep. That's Helix, HELIX, sleep.com/sleep for $200 off. Thanks, everybody. All right, everybody, it's time for the Sleepy Supporter Zone, the part of the podcast where I normally thank the listeners who supported the sponsors so I could keep bringing the show for free. But I have to ask for your support here because it's the end of the year. This is when the companies are looking at their 2021 budgets, and if working with Sleep With Me brings them value. So really, they do need to hear from Sleep With Me listeners. And, I only count on a few people here in this message taking action, whether support the sponsor or just amplify the message and let them know that their partnership with Sleep With Me is important. So if you've worked with BetterHelp, Quip, Air Doctor, Sunsoil, Relief Band, if you've gotten a BlendJet, let those companies know about it, that you heard about them on Sleep With Me, that you supported them or you appreciate them supporting Sleep With Me, because that's really how I get to bring, I know now the business is not the greatest part of the show. The show is here to put you to sleep, but that's what makes it possible. It's just a few people. Not even everybody has to do it. Just a few of you that say, Scoots, I'll do it. Thank you so much. And let me know about it so I can thank you on a future Sleepy Supporter Zone. I also, the second part of Sleepy Supporter Zone is you getting the support you need. So if you're having a tough time right now in this moment, there's resources you could reach out to right now in the show notes in your podcast app. Please use those. Please. And then we want to support the members of our community. Black Lives Matter. So if you've been impacted by racism or you want to be a part of the solution, there's going to be links to organizations that can help. And the third part of Sleepy Supporter Zone is what I'm supporting. And right now I'm supporting the Emotional PPE Project. You could find out more at emotionalppe.org. And the Emotional PPE Project connects healthcare workers in need with licensed mental health professionals who can help. And I don't really need to say more right now, other than we appreciate all of you out there working to keep all of us healthy. And you're members of our community too, and we want to support you. So check out, support, or use the resources at emotionalppe.org. And that's it. Mr. Bart, a lot of people help out on this show. Who are they?
Chris Posty Poster Son sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Edits episodes too. Carl W. the Legend also edits episodes. Kenny, Scotty, Jennifer, and Ashley. Eric and the team at Astound are on the website. I am the mystery bard. I do the lullabies, yeah. I do commissions at JonathanMann.net. I'll write a song for you. It's almost Christmas, y'all. You can tell me the story and I'll make it personal. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer. These are your moderators. You can support your scooter on Patreon. Buy the merch and support the sponsors. You can find anything you want at sleepwithmepodcast.com. foundation, and Scooter might get a perm.
Thanks, Mr. Bard. You could commission a song for the holiday season for a gift at song.jonathanmann.net, and be sure to check out our Sleep Phones merch store at sleepwithmepodcast.com/sleepphones. All levels of sleep phones now with Sleep With Me merch style. And once we get them selling, we got a couple other designs by Ashley on our art ready to go. Thanks, everybody. And what do you say we slow it down and get on with the show? Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing? Trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake. It could be thoughts, things you're thinking about on your mind. You're thinking about past, present, the future, tomorrow, next week, whatever it is, stuff, whatever you're thinking about, I don't know, lists. That's a list of listicles and lists. Holy moly. Remember when I was going to start that podcast, a litany of lists, and I never followed, that's on my list now, because another thing I never followed through on. That's one list I've never made, luckily. Like, it's one of those self-generating lists. Maybe I'll get back to that. So whatever's keeping you awake, thoughts, feelings, any emotions coming up. They could be emotions about the past or the present or the future. Physical sensations, whatever it is that's keeping you awake. Changes in schedule, time. Maybe you work. Here's a big shout out to my second and third shift workers. And those of you on the fourth, those of you on the fourth shift, which I've, tried to promote more and more. And those of you on shifts in 4D, you say, well, I'm working in the fourth, I got a shift in the fourth dimension, Scoots. What about me? I say, don't worry. One day I'll mention you on an episode. Will you hear it? I don't know, because I don't know how that works. Well, do you work here and return to the fourth dimension? Or do you work in the fourth dimension and return here? Or did I say that? Did my brain just get caught in another dimension? How many dimensions are there again? Oh, I don't know. Okay, well. Did this have anything to do with how many axes are there? Is there X, Y, and Z? Okay, my brain is definitely dead silent when I'm asking these questions. I was waiting for an answer, even inside my head that I would have given voice to. No answers in there. In fact, I felt some part of myself rolling its eyes. When I said X, I said, what? And then I heard something mutter. What do axes and dimensions have to do with each other? And I said, whoa, hold the phone there, because how are you going to get what if you had to measure a dimension? Well, you'd need the axes, or you'd say like length and width, in depth. That's 3D, correct? So I think it's a perfectly reasonable question to ask. And that's how I treat those parts of me. I say, well, this is, I'm not here to get into a big thing about this. I just was wondering, and I think it's, I'm just asking questions. Okay. And then my brain says, yeah, I guess you're right. Sorry, I didn't see it that way. But you're right. I never would have, my brain, without a hint of sarcasm that I can detect, said, I never would have thought we'd need to get out the old measuring tape and start measuring dimensions. Or and I said, well, somewhere out there in the history of time and space, there's definitely been someone or will be right now whose job it has to do with measuring the dimensions of dimensions. I mean, that's a reasonable assumption, right? Oh, my brain just said, I know one person that wouldn't be qualified for that. And I say, you're right about that. I would not be qualified for, they'd say, what is that? Is that what number is that? Or is that a letter? Well, I estimate, I use a form of estimation called, the tape measure keeps moving around. It's my own special form of estimation. I mean, those were that was a Wrigley dimension you had me dealing with. You said nebula. Can you just stay in one place while I measure you? And that wasn't Nebula, the famous character that associates with superheroes or superheroine. That was something else. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I forgot. I'm in the middle of I'm in the middle of the start of a sleep podcast. Oh boy. Okay, so whatever's keeping you awake, I'm here to take your mind off of stuff. What I'm going to do, and I just gave you an example, is I'm going to send my voice across the deep dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, superfluous tangents. So I'm going to go off topic. I'm going to get mixed up, which we've just seen. Not go anywhere. You see, he talked about stuff, but I don't ever, he's the only person that could talk about something without reaching a conclusion. I'd say thank you very much. I mean, if you, once you've had my imaginary future job and another, measuring dimensions of dimensions, I think, that's probably what one of the, I mean, really, when you talk about that, that's really an essential job of an astro person. I don't know if it's an astrophysicist, but that would say, wouldn't that be, you could use that if you're an astrophysicist, say, well, what does an astrophysicist do anyway? Well, one of our main jobs is measuring the dimensions of dimensions. Maybe I should check in next time I check in at one of the great particle colliders. I heard I heard there's a new superconductor that doesn't have to be measured in Kelvin or something. So I'm excited about that because that makes it easier for me to pop in and join in the collision. I say super collision. That was a wonderful one. That's another book I will be working on one day. Compliments for super colliders and particle accelerators. If you meet a particle, things to say. If you meet a particle collider, what did I say? Particle accelerator or a collider or a super collider at a party. Small talk with super colliders and particle accelerators. So, oh boy, if you're new, you're already hearing the podcast, so you already have a good idea. So this show is not a podcast you need to listen to. And I think I set a good example of why. It's a kind of podcast you kind of barely listen to. You just kind of barely pay attention. So that's one thing to know. The other thing to know is this podcast really doesn't put you to sleep. I'm here to keep you company while you drift off. So even if you can't sleep, I'm going to be here. The shows are an hour to give you plenty of time. Fall asleep at your leisure. If you can't sleep, I'll just be here keeping you company and rambling. It's interesting because tonight is a science-based, well, if there's an imaginary branch of science, and I'm not talking about the one we're familiar with, I'm talking about a different one. Not fantasy science, but yeah, I mean, I guess in some sense, fantasy science. Okay, so what was I saying? Oh, so this is a podcast you don't need to listen to. Don't need to fall asleep either. I just keep you company while you drift off. Podcast does not work for everybody either. That's the thing. It's not everybody's cup of tea. But for most people it worked for, it took 2 or 3 tries before they realized, oh, I feel like I was confusing distaste with neutrality. I actually feel so neutral about this podcast, I could sleep to it. But naturally, when you first check the show out, you might have strong feelings about it because it's very different, bit confused. I'm a bit strange. I go off topic. I got creaky dulcet tones. So all I can say is give it a few tries and see how it goes. I really hope it can help you fall asleep. And I don't gain anything, really. I mean, if you saw my inbox, you'd just say, just give it two or three tries and see if it works. I hope it does. So that's that. Another thing, if you're new, that throws new listeners off is the structure of the show. Especially, well, I guess it throws people off whether this is their first podcast or they listen to a lot of podcasts. It throws them off either way. And I think the reason why is that the structure's not it's not comparable to another podcast. So we start off with a greeting. That's pretty normal. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends beyond the binary. That's how everybody knows that I want you to feel seen and welcome. And then I'm trying to make a safe place, or a place that you could feel, you say, well, check that out. I'm feeling ambivalent at this point. An ambivalent place that could develop into something you feel safe in. So there's that. So that's the greeting. Then there's business at the top of the show. Usually we got two pieces of business, then the sleepy supporter zone, then the intro. And the intro is a long part of the beginning of the show, usually from 6 minutes to 22 minutes or so, or at least lately. And that's where I introduce the podcast, which you say normally isn't an intro like around 30 seconds to 2 minutes. I say, yeah, normally it is. But this is an intro that could put you to sleep. So that's why it's 22 minutes. But really, the intro kind of serves a couple purposes. One, if you're new, it kind of gives you an idea what to expect. And you say, oh, okay, this is a podcast. Okay. Is he going to do like, I don't know, you get familiar with the idea that I'm, in the style of the show. But two, there are listeners that fall asleep during it. There are like 2 or 3% of listeners that skip ahead to 20 minutes and start listening there. And there are people that listen during the day or wake up and put the podcast on. There's a lot of different use cases, but for a lot of listeners, and this isn't right or wrong, but just like the usual way people get into the show initially is, they listen to the intro during their wind down, whether they're in bed or they're getting ready for bed. And that makes the intro, that 20 minutes serves as a way to get some distance from your day, your daytime personality, and to make nighttime where something like a little bit nicer. You say, well, I'm easing into bedtime with Scoots. So I'm taking your mind off of stuff. And that way you're kind of descending ideally into sleep. I mean, that's the only way that works for me. So, so that's the intro. Then there's business, kind of that's the main meat of the business of the show. Then there's our story. Tonight it'll be a holiday episode where we look at Santa Claus. And, I'm just going to say it up front. One, I believe in Santa Claus. Two, I'm going to explain one argument that hasn't been put forth, like undisclosed, like, well, I don't know if I have, I guess I have firsthand knowledge of this stuff. When people say, oh, Santa's impossible, just a fantasy. And also I believe, Santa Claus turned things over to Roberta Claus in 2013. But you could call Roberta Claus is comfortable being called Santa Claus because Santa Claus is a role. Roberta Claus is the current person serving in that role, which is a long... She's only well, actually, I don't know this, actually. I just made an assumption. I'm operating on the assumption she's only the second person to occupy the role of Santa Claus, but I could be wrong about that. Not playing the fictional role of Santa Claus, the real role. So tonight I'll be talking about that. So, if you have young people in your life or you're a young person or you're a teacher, you could go ahead and put this on, you could put this on the syllabus. And I mean, I don't know. Can't promise you'll keep your job, but you could say, well, this is another argument of how all this is possible. It'll help you see why you could get in the holiday mood. So we'll talk about that. Then there's some thank yous. So that's the structure of the show. Like I said, this podcast it's not for everybody, but for the people it works for, like they say, yeah, give it 2 or 3 tries. The other important thing is the reason I make the show. The reason I make the show is because I've been there, tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep. I've had all of those. I probably had all of those in the last 48 hours, including my new thing, which is, my daughter wants me to call it #laying, which I've talked about. And it's because of this, this 2020, I wake up really early. And I try to get back to sleep because, I don't have a sleep podcast that I can put on. Luckily, you do. But you could also put this podcast on and just try this. And, I don't think I've told my therapist about this because this is really where I say, wow, I really am getting better. This stuff actually works. All the work I put in, and I'm not kidding. I guess it sounds like I'm saying it facetiously, but so I have this new thing when I wake up early that I kind of acceptance, I guess is what you call it. I say, okay, I woke up early. I don't want to get out of bed, but I also don't want to put pressure on myself to fall back asleep. So I'm just going to lie here for a little while, try to get comfortable, but try not to, because for me, once I say I want to go back to sleep, you know how that goes. And then I start to get, my temperature starts to rise, and I'm not my physical temperature, you know what I'm saying? And I just get frowny. In this new laying thing, it doesn't work all the time because you got to be in the right mood. I say, well, I'm just going to lie here. Maybe I'll let my thoughts drift. Maybe I'll meditate. Maybe I'll feel some feelings or get comfortable. Maybe I'll listen to some sounds. And tell you what, sometimes I fall back asleep. Sometimes I don't. And then sometimes I wait I give it a few minutes and I say, well, I didn't fall back asleep. And I kind of, start drinking coffee. So it's just one of the things that, I don't recommend it. I'd recommend listening to this podcast and laying, falling back asleep. But, I've been there. That's the main thing. So I know how it feels in the morning or at night or, all the time. And so if I can help you, if I can make bedtime something you don't dread, that's the highest goal I could hit. If you just say, well, at least I got Scoots, I got that. At least I'm not like Scoots just laying there. Hoping I got Scoots to keep me company. I mean, in some sense, I have pre-Scoots because whatever, I can just let my thoughts drift sometimes. So it's like pre-podcast material. So if I can help, it really gives my life meaning. But also the other side of it is you deserve a good night's sleep. You deserve a place where you can get some rest. And if I can help with that, that would mean a lot because if your life's better, all our lives are better. If your life's richer, all our lives are richer. It's just the truth. It increases it. It's like an incremental increase in the goodness of the world. An incremental increase in the goodness of the world. Sign me up. That's my dream. So I really want to help put a little bit of an incremental increase in the rest you get and in the goodness of your life. Or that you could live your life in a more fuller way. So that's why I'm here. But I, don't take that serious talk serious. Mostly it's me goofing around and talking to myself. So I'm glad you're here. I work really hard. I yearn and I strive, and I really want to help you fall asleep. Thanks again for coming by. And here's a couple of ways I'm able to bring this podcast twice a week. Hey, everybody, it's Scoots here, and I'm here to talk about therapy. I work with a licensed professional therapist on a regular basis, and it has been so beneficial in my life. And if you're out there thinking about it, you're dealing with something, you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe it's anxiety, maybe you just want to make some changes in your life, and you want to have someone there to listen and to help you with issues. A professional therapist is an amazing, for me, life-changing resource. So whatever it is, anxiety, grief, depression, relationships, sleep, anything you're dealing with, a licensed professional therapist can help. And with BetterHelp, all you do is simply fill out a questionnaire to help assess your basic needs, and then you get matched with your counselor in under 48 hours. From there, you could easily schedule secure video or phone sessions, plus exchange unlimited messages to communicate with your therapist at your convenience. And everything you share is confidential. If for any reason you're unhappy with your counselor, you can request a new one at any time at no additional charge. So you can find someone you feel good with, which is just another important part of the process. It's just another safe place for you to find. Join the 1 million plus people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced BetterHelp counselor. BetterHelp is an affordable option for our listeners, and get 10% off your first month with the discount code SLEEPWITHME. That's one word, SLEEPWITHME. Get started started today at BETTERHELP.com. That's betterhelp.com/sleepwithme. Talk to a therapist online and get help. betterhelp.com/sleepwithme for 10% off your first month. Thanks, everybody. All right, everybody, it's Scoots here. I'm here with a holiday tale. Oh, boy, is this exciting. And our holiday, there's a lot of things. How do I set this up? Because there's, okay, kids. Now, this is just, I don't know how many people are listening that where you stand on this holiday issue of Santa Claus or Roberta Claus, who took over for Santa Claus and now goes by Santa Claus. So I don't know where you stand on this, one of the great issues of our time, but I do want to explain one of the many, what's known as a myth, but you could say, so there's people that say, oh, do you believe in Santa Claus or Santa Claus or Santa Claus or Santa Claus? And the mere raising of the question makes me say, hey, could you pause and ask yourself why you're asking the question? Because when you start out a holiday tale, you say, do you believe in Santa Claus? Or have you got to a point where you ask that question in a way that has an agenda to prove or disprove something instead of fostering an underlying I say, well, I guess I have an agenda, which is like everybody starting a holiday tale. It's to bring you a little dose of meanders and holiday cheer and take your mind off of stuff, but also to encourage those of you that say, well, okay, Scoots, I'm whatever age I am and I've been told these things, or I'm just a curious child and I say to myself, oh, I do love Santa Claus and a lot, but there's a lot of questions I have about Santa Claus and how it's possible to visit every home in the world. Because you say as soon as you say that, it brings up a lot. Well, what if we don't, and I say, okay. Well, I do want to tell you that, this takes things in a different direction. For those of you that say, I got another part of my brain, Scoots, the part that's, it's a weird part of my brain that Scoots has. It has a lot of questions and a lot of needs and wants to bring up a lot of points, but also doesn't want to do a lot. And you'd say, here's the thing. I just thought of this. They have a name for that part of the brain. And like one, they'd call it limbic. The other one, it starts with an L. But if you think about it, those of you, and I've never had one of these beings, which would say is they're cool. They have a cool circulatory system, and they may or may not, depending on which part of science you practice, be descendant from dinosaurs. Or was it birds were the precursor, and these current friends are the descendants of dinosaurs with their cool circulatory system? Now, some people may have even gotten a pet that has a cool circulatory system for a holiday, but some people use it as describe a part of our brain or our functioning, particularly my therapist. And because, they say, well, boy, do you have a strong, when you say you're cool blood, I say I'm hot blooded, check it and see. Well, your limbic system's cool, man. And I say, cool like or cool like the temperature. They say cool. Oh, well, isn't it interesting that part of our brain, which feels very active, is named after a being that spends most of its time lying around on warm rocks or under warm lamps if it's a pet, and does everything very slowly. I never thought about that, but you say, well, wait a second. Did you name it because of your feelings about those cool circulatory beings? Because as far as my research could tell, they said, well, actually, Scoots, let me explain it to you here. And I'd say, okay, but back it up, because most of the time they're lying around, even the ones I see out there in the world. So they say those, so they have the cool circulatory system, but they spend most of their time relaxing in the sun. You see, maybe they have it figured out in a way I don't. Oh, but I'm here to tell you a holiday tale I don't even know, to be honest, what any of that has to do with it, except that one part of our brain says, no, 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 no. But I'm here to explain to you one of the realms of possibility. And I'll bring up the question that comes up, even when I'm trying to write stuff around this. Is Santa Claus real? And if you're going to say yes, usually the adult response with when you're making a show like this is to say, well, do you believe in Santa Claus? And even years ago, I talked about that there was a book about how is the physics of making it possible and those kind of things. But I wanted to talk tonight about like a version of this that I've been recently a theory. And so I'm going to turn it over to a theorist. I guess this would be the first time they're on the show. Maybe, I don't know, because they haven't recorded it or popped into the studio yet. But they're going to explain about. So here we go. This is Gilda, and yes, hello, thank you, Scooter. Thanks. I'm here, and I'm Gilda, the holiday theorist, and I'm here to offer you a holiday theory, and you could say a treaty or a treatise on how the relationship between Santa Claus and water, and how it makes the Santa Claus real. And I say water and water vapor. So the wintertime and the holiday season, for most of the time, with increased precipitation in the northern hemisphere, and those of you in the southern hemisphere, you don't have to have a high level of humidity for this theory to be true. But this would be a myth better explained in a high humidity southern hemisphere region, though there's always water. Did you know we're made up of water, and water is, essential to our respiration and all those things. I'm not here to get too caught up on us and water, but you have a glass of water. Now, maybe you don't want to have a glass of water right at bedtime. But I want to talk about a couple of things about the holiday season and those of us that already believe in Santa Claus or believe, you say, well, now I totally understand. Maybe you don't want to hear these theories. You may say, well, that doesn't make me feel good. It brings, and I'd say, okay, yeah, that's understandable that Santa Claus may not bring up strong feelings for everyone. And that's why, Santa Claus decided to turn things over to Roberta Claus, because Roberta Claus, she was a scientist that also didn't believe in Santa Claus until she took over. And that's that's presented as ages ago. Sleep With Me explained how that's possible. I think you could listen on the patron feed to somewhere. But for some of us, wondering about Santa Claus also brings up, you say, well, maybe part of it is wanting to believe and wanting to believe in that grand myth. But then you say, well, it makes a lot of questions, and I don't want those questions to interfere with my experience of the myth. Because then I say, okay, well, let's just spend some time here together. And I'm going to say that, like a lot of us, and even those that say, oh boy, this or like holidays and all myths offer a spectrum or layers for you to experience something. Now, that's just my theory. It's a kind of a made up theory. It's called the myth, sandwich layer theory, club sandwich myth theory, which I don't like club because they say we can only get this sandwich in a club. Well, I don't want to be a part of a club. Then I need to be a part of a club to get a sandwich. Is this this is a sandwich-based club, or this club is a perk of the sandwich is a perk of the club? Because I could go to a diner and get this sandwich one, so that's not that great. What's the perk? It's just an extra piece of bread in there? Sorry, sometimes I rail against things beyond. But you now some of you may say, well, that's kind of old fashioned. What's a club sandwich, and why are we talking about club sandwiches? And what does that have to do with it? And what if I don't have all? And I say, well, a club sandwich to me is a layered sandwich with extra layers. And a club sandwich, traditionally, if you get it at a diner, which anyone can go to for the most part, is a sandwich that has a piece of bread. Then usually, now you could have a condiment on your bread. Bread's normally toasted, and that's for flavor and structural integrity. Then you have some layers on your, so you have the bread, then you have the condiment. Condiment's kind of a layer, technically. Then you'll have some layers. Maybe they're vegetable layers, maybe not. That's the beauty of constructing a sandwich, to construct a metaphor for a myth, a metaphorical sandwich for a metaphorical myth. So let's just say we're going to have a vegetable sandwich. So you say, okay, I'll have some lettuce, I'll have some tomato, then maybe some cucumber. And you say, then you take another toasted piece of bread, maybe with, normally, I don't know if it's condimented or not. So let's say it's not condimented. And you say, on this sandwich, what would be our condiment? I'd say, well, if it's a vegetable, and I'd say maybe some hummus on that first layer. Now, I know those of you are saying, please, on this next piece of toast, yeah, we'll put some avocado there on the next layer. And maybe something to add some savory, is something you say, well, some pickled something. And maybe even something like, what is that called? Seitan. Maybe something else to add, not a faux meat, but a little bit of heft and savoriness and flavor. And then maybe another vegetable layer, maybe one more iceberg lettuce layer. Just coolness and crunch is important. And then the last piece of toast. Now, I hear somebody saying, don't all sandwiches have layers? Yes, but this is a lot of layers. Two, I hear, what does this have to do with the holiday season? And I'd say, well, sometimes you prefer a sandwich with all those layers, right? So that's one way to think about your belief system in Santa Claus, is my point there. And you'd say, what does this have to do with, is Santa Claus possible? And I'd say, okay, well, we come up with the things. Okay, is Santa Claus possible? One person, in our case, Roberta Claus, she is both the figurehead and the central distributor of holiday joy, traditionally expressed in kids getting stuff as on the morning or the evening of Christmas. And I realized that you may have, like I said, we're going to look at it as layers in the sandwich and saying, well, you want a sandwich or not? Like the all or nothing myths, you say, well, Santa real or not? Is this good for, well, I only see Christmas through this lens, or I don't, this is, you say, well, okay, I see there's other layers. And people may change the layers of that club sandwich around. They go more traditional, mayo, bacon, and turkey, or whatever. I don't know. This is but a layer that hasn't been talked about. I guess that's my point. In one layer, you could see the holiday season through. So you say, is Santa Claus, Roberta Claus, real? Someone who goes around the world delivering toys. Okay, you say, not so sure about that one. One, because what about people, okay, I hear you. There's multiple objections to just that as a factual action, and two, as a possible action. Understandable, very, very understandable. So, okay, so as you say, okay, now how's your theory present those two things? And I'd say, well, what if we go deeper to the people who say yes? So you said yes. Well, one, they go to all or nothing after that. Yes, Santa Claus is real. Yes, Santa Claus delivers presents around the globe. It's a fact. You either accept it or you don't. You say, okay, well, that's one way to deal with it. I understand that. Or you say, well, like I want to believe in it so strongly that at least during the season, I use all of the accoutrement of the season, not just because I enjoy it, but also as a mechanism of cognitive dissonance, as a distraction from the weight that I am going into an all or nothing place and just believing Santa Claus is real without, because I just want to be immersed, and the accoutrement helps me in that immersion. much like a suspension of disbelief when you watch a movie, going to the movie theater and having habits when that was something we did very often, or going to a theme park. It's a part of a process, right? It's a suspension of disbelief or accoutrement that make it easier to have cognitive dissonance. I guess is simply, and I'd say, well, I guess suspension of disbelief is another nicer way to put it. And so then some people, you may say, okay, is it real or not? And they may say no, but symbolically it's enjoyable. Or you may say, well, no, but it's fun to think about. It's okay, those are things, you're starting to see layers in the sandwich there. Or some people may speculate, not only I like to think it is possible, and I like to think about how would it be possible. Or some people might say, well, it's a historical myth about something that no longer occurs, but does occur, but we still kind of it's a participatory myth. And I'd say, whoa, I never thought about that till it just came out of my mouth. I wish I had written all this down. Tell me more. Well, it's a myth. You could believe that it's a tale or that it's a factual accounting of something that occurred in the past. And now we as a people, the people that participate in it, and you say, well, there's secular and non-secular holidays and even cultural, secular, non-secular cultural expressions of holiday traditions. And then there's family, and it goes level by level, even geographic. And they say, yes. Now we're getting, so there's a layer. So those are layers on the sandwich. Yes. And that doesn't make it untrue that you say, well, and it could be real. Or, yeah, I'd like to think about that book with the physics of if it's real. Or the other, all these specials that are on the streaming boxes, and looking at that and all the it just opens me up to the possibility it could be real. And then we go into a place where there's also a couple other not lengthwise words, but words that are used in big ways, magic and spirit, that we need to touch on before we get to the this is some of what I think will become a popular factual way of looking at the holiday season, therefore, moving forward. So there's magic. They say, well, how does this all, if it is, not only is it real, but the way it's real is magic. Or you wouldn't say, has anybody, probably, they said, well, no, it's a superpower. How come that hasn't been a thing already, like where they say, oh, well, just like these other super beings that get all their movies and stuff, Santa Claus or Roberta Claus is a superpowered being or a magical being. And as a part of our belief system in this magical being, we believe that things are possible for Santa Claus and maybe Santa Claus's supporting cast, because of the magical powers, and that'd be just amazing and powerful. So a lot of these things could be explained. You say, well, how does they make all those toys? Well, that isn't always explained by magic, just by hard work. But how does Santa fly around the world? Magic. How do all the toys get delivered? Magic. Now, some people would say, well, it's the magic of physics, this, and this, or technology, which would be considered magic if it wasn't Earth-based technology, either technology from our future or from another universe, which isn't really talked about a lot. But you say, well, what if Santa Claus is not a human being? And now that's not something I'm introducing here tonight. Oh, no, not at all. I'm introducing it as an Earth-based thing. Oh, boy. But that does open up a thing. Now, friendly, whatever, beneficent or whatever that word is, benevolent, being from another world. But, a lot of times people like to picture Roberta Claus in this. You say, oh, well, I project, I can imagine what Roberta Claus is like. trying to take over the reins from Santa Claus, who was from an earlier era as far as our images of Santa Claus are concerned. But when you start to say, well, if it's a non-mammal or some sort of a non-earth, you say, well, similar to a mammal. You say, okay, well, that's tough to picture. And I say, well, yeah, I don't want to make it, this is not meant to, I guess I went off topic there because I hadn't really thought about it, but I said, well, non-Earth technology would be magical and in some sense magic because we wouldn't understand how it worked, and it would be it could make any of that possible. So I guess it's another layer of the sandwich I just never realized, and a simple one. You say, and it could be a simple answer. Well, what if Santa's not human and not from Earth? You could say that Santa's from a galaxy long, long ago and far, far away or whatever, or far in the future, or at our time in an advanced, very advanced civilization that loves joy. Interesting layer of the sandwich to think about, especially if you accept that last point first. Agenda to bring joy to our world. You say, well, what are they doing with it? I say, unfortunately, yeah, I'm sure that other fictional said, well, the joy is powering, just like in those great Pixar movies. It's powering their world, but in a non-benevolent way, not like the movies. And you'd say, well, that complicates my feelings about the holiday season. I said, well, it's just a thought experiment. It's not true because I have the truth here tonight. And you'd say, well, so is any of that true? And I'd say it is one layer of the sandwich. There's something magical about the idea of Roberta Claus or Santa Claus, which I use interchangeably. There's something magic about overcoming our doubts and saying it is possible. And it is possible because of magic, so we don't have to worry about it. It makes it the suspension of disbelief a little bit more palpable. And I would say it's possible, too. And also you say, well, then maybe that makes it even more possible. I'd say, well, they're good then. You say, well, that's just all the layer you need to think about. And you could also, instead of saying, no, Santa Claus is a human, say, okay, just use your superpowers then if you're not comfortable with technology from another world or magic. Now, there's a non-secular phrase that sounds like it's secular, but they say the spirit of the holiday season, the spirit of Christmas, the season of giving, the joy of giving. And a lot of times that can be used, you say, well, to help, but you say, what, but the joy of getting for children and other adults sometimes are getting presents. And you see, that's what I'm in for, the spirit of Christmas. And, we're just acting out these roles driven by the spirit of Christmas. And you say, well, that's kind of vague. I guess you're saying of following, you're just following a tradition and meeting expectations and participating in a myth, hopefully joyfully. Is that what your spirit of Christmas says? And I say, yeah, I guess so, but, and I'd say, well, you're on the right path now. I hear your thoughts whirring, and I've led you in the direction I want to. Because you say, well, wait a second, are you saying something more? And I'm saying, no, let's go back to the world of water. And now a lot of people that practice physics and science might say this is stretching things. But I would say that this is all made possible by water. And you'd say, okay, what do you mean? And I'd say, okay, let's accept a couple of things about water. There's water interacting with all of our cells, I think is acceptable. There's water even in even in places with low humidity all around us. And we're expiring water. There's water, in our mouths, there's water everywhere. And in different formulas, and connected to different things or, carrying different molecules. But there's the molecule H2O. And water travels. Water is a part of these weather systems. Water falls from the sky in different ways. It rises from the ground. It moves through our countrysides. It's carried in the air. It floats in clouds and fog. We even carry it in our clothes, or attached to our cars as slush in the winter season for some. So you say, okay, water's everywhere. What does that have to do with the holiday season? I'd say, okay, you accept that, right? You accept that water is even in your thoughts. And you say, whoa. I'm thinking about water now because you're talking about it. And I say, well, however deep you want to go, water makes that possible. Thinking about water is made possible by water, believe it or not. Talk about you say, it really is it? I say, oh boy, on many, many levels, thinking about water is made possible by water. And water, isn't just always H2O, right? You say, well, there's something suspended in the water. There's waters connected to this. You say, well, I got lemon in my water. And is it suspended? Is it attached? I don't know, but it's the lemon's in there. Oh boy, that tastes good. Or other things. Or you say, well, I mixed my water in. I made some holiday cookies. Or there's even water in my butter, right? Or my, say, okay, yes, you're on the right path. I think you are. And some people associate evergreen trees with the holiday season, correct? And evergreen trees are evergreen, one of many, not just the only reason, but because of water. And in that evergreen is water and many other wonderful, and you could even say magical properties. Or learning, because we don't understand them. So you say, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not following you at all of what this has to do. What does this have to do with the holiday season and Santa Claus? Okay, so let's take a couple of the myths of Santa Claus and apply them to water, okay? Let's just do that. And water vapor, moving water transmitting across the globe. And you say, okay, what do you mean? And you say, okay, one part of this myth is that, there's some place called the North Pole, and there's people working on toys and making them for free and then giving them away, which you say, okay, well, that's just part of the holiday myth for sure. And I guess we could think about, was that once true? Or it's nice to think about, but it's probably in a snow globe sense true, because I know that I go out and get gifts, those kind of things. Say, okay. I hear you. Or you say, well, I'd like to believe it, but do I read it? And I'd say, okay, well, what if just like that lemon could be attached to the water? And you see, it's all year long that it's attached there, but it's just sitting there in the water. Just a small thing, microns of submicrons, subatomic possibly, like maybe elemental, I'm not sure. There's a giving element somewhere in there. And you see, you're really, and I say, okay, well, what if it is circling the globe and something about, sometimes it's inert and sometimes it's active, and maybe there's some other element within people giving that maybe causes that element to subdivide. So then it's the idea, okay, well, then it says, and now that we could call that E1 is the element, ELF1. And that is the Elven, see, okay, again, is that does it have its subatomic number? I say, yes, its subatomic number is G for giving. And you paused there because you said, well, that's not, and I said, you're correct. How many electrons? And I say, whoa, this is below those things. Possibly made up of the joy of dark matter. And this element travels around and starts to multiply in the holiday season. because of the mechanisms of participation, either on a sub level or active level. You see, because there's water, when it hits your brain or your heart or your limbs or whatever, it says, oh, wait a second, I feel you feeling that holiday season. I'm going to start to subdivide some of these, whatever, E1Gs or whatever, the giving elements of the season. And now marketers have known this for a while, that the subdivision occurs and it increases activity. Now, we currently live in a non-barter-based economy for a lot of us, and, they're very far removed in those things. And no, if we look at it in a non-judgmental way, which takes its own level of cognitive dissonance, we could say, okay, this increases economic activity or planning of economic activity around the idea of giving and, production and all those things. And thus, this sub-element, EG1, as I'm calling it now, is one element. It takes the place of what once was happening up there and makes it possible. Now, let me just blow your mind for 1 second. What if we had a dark matter microscope, which is never, beyond electrons, beyond the realm of possibility? Because you say, wait a second. Once you learn, not just to explain the physics of it for those physicists that want to pish and posh about this. Because, folding really opens a lot of possibilities. And what they don't know about the dark matter, or what they don't talk about and publicize, is that what if it's matter folded in on itself, and folded and folded and folded? And in that folding, what happens is it does touch on, now this is just the image of it. Because of that folding, it really goes well beyond our understanding. Because it's universes fold, it's touching other universes, which we really can't understand. So you're going to have to just take my image for this, because the image is true, but also it's an image to explain something that's kind of beyond our understanding. But you could say, wait a second, you could have just said that and stopped the recording about the holiday season. But if we were to look at, through our eyes right now, if we were looking, now, I guess this would be a dark matter microscope, and on that, with a filter that's a filter of understanding, what you would see is within each of those, is a universe of North Poles with these giant communities of elven workers working. And, they're part of it. Then you'd get you'd have to go way down the rabbit hole. You say, well, so that's like a Christmas-based universe. And I'd say, yes, but just like in each of the specials, but that's, then you're just going down a rabbit hole. This is just to explain the fact, that yes, on that submicron level, there is an entire universe of a holiday season contained within the EG1 elements. I'm calling it an element, even though it's much smaller than an element. And it's transferred around the globe by water. It's very simple. So that explains so the toys are being produced, but within a universe within the EG1 element. But when that EG element is present and begins to subdivide, or you'd say, what does subdivide doesn't mean? I say, well, it's a concentrated refolding, which is an expansion of that universe. So really, it's not a subdivision. And it's not even a growth. It's an increase in mass, but again, mass is just a word that you wouldn't, the EG1 element is gaining mass, but its mass is contained within a universe contained within a fold of the element. So its mass in our world is not increasing, but the power put off by it which multiplies and multiplies seasonally. Hence, holiday activity increases along with the tradition. You say, well, which came first, the EG1 or the purchasing of, and I'd say, well, I don't know. We'd have to, that would be, that's, maybe that's for next holiday season. I'm not exactly sure. And it transfers around people, but some people react differently, which is okay. And normally say, no. But we can also see as we look through this magic, like it feels magical because it's beyond our understanding. But when we look through this lens attached to this dark matter microscope, we're calling it DMM, you also begin to see, you say, okay, so that's how the toy, okay, so then you have Santa Claus, and then that's how, okay, so that's a very folded universe. That's how those things happen. You see, okay, so then the next myth that's really hard to understand is that Santa Claus travels the world, goes down chimneys, this is just a traditional myth. It drops the toys off and vanishes. How is any of that possible? Okay, well, when there's a buildup related to the passing of time and the field, like this EG1 is reacting and folding and constantly up until like it's more relating less to calendar time and internal human time, and it's very interrelated. And you see, there is an element within there, S, so it's capital S, lowercase a, and then a capital T. It's not SAT, it's short for Santa, it's the Santa element we're calling it, which is even smaller. And if you were to look again through the microscope into that elven world, you would see a Roberta Claus or Santa Claus type figure within that world. But again, because you'd say, well, was it one? So there's billions of elven worlds. I say, no. They're folded within, again, you say, in some sense, there's only one EV1 or whatever I said, the elven molecule. But it's really hard to understand how one thing was suspended in water. It could be connected to infinite numbers. But it is because of the folding, which, again, you say, okay, you're blowing my mind here. See, it's a bit like a black hole, but it's different because there's no suction. There's just interconnection. But that just helps because you rest, like you say, but then you could bring up, is there an infinite number of elven universes? And I'd say, well, that is even beyond my realm of understanding. That is one of the theories placed forth in I think, in theoretical physics. So, yes, I would say. But in our holiday season does not rely upon the infinite number of elven universes occurring at the same time. It only relies on this one, which we're calling the EV molecule or EV1, whatever that, you know what I mean? It's just, it has infinite connections because it doesn't have infinite folds but it would, you'd say, if you were to analyze the folds, it would take you too long. So you'd say, even our supercomputers would say, oh boy, where does that fold even go? I say, well, to another, anyway. So I just want to explain that. There's really only one North Pole, this EV1, you see, is it connecting like to a hub? I see, no, it's full, it's universe. Anyway, I guess I got off track. But as that EV1 gets the season activity, giving activity increases, it ejects a new molecule, the SAT molecule, the Santa molecule. And that happens to be ejected into water vapor right at that time. And what that does is it just starts to circulate. I mean, technically, all it really does is it circulates that the joyous look on Roberta Claus's face when children are being themselves in an imperfect way, just as a side note. You don't have to be happy in the holiday season. Joy is an option. And joy is something you can experience or observe, but you don't have to be joyful all the time. Roberta Claus wants you to know that. Sometimes you get up on the wrong side of the bed on the holidays, and even a kid. Or you say you have a disagreement with one of your siblings. Roberta Claus knows that happens, and she's watching. She's there, and she's bouncing around. But most, bouncing around the joy, and that's how those now some reason now we don't totally understand this, but something about the activity of the SAT, the Santa molecule, with the EV1 molecule still present, it does have this, it causes water molecules to spread around the globe. Now, this is very low-level activity. Weather satellites cannot pick this up, but it does cause them to float down into communities. It does use some of the atmosphere to travel and the jet streams, but it's not solely relying on the jet stream because of the interaction of those two molecules. It is propelling itself on its own. And you say, well, what's the agenda of the SAT molecule? To observe, experience, and partake and participate in holiday joy. And I can't break that down physics and universe wise. But it does descend because, so that's why, and it says, oh, well, if there is a chimney or a roof, even when you say, well, that's our exhaust for our restroom fan, you say, oh boy. But that's how those things actually do go down the chimney in some cases. They can also come up through the door. Or through, this we're talking about, you could carry them in on your clothes or your boots. When you knock off your boots in the right place, those of you that are lucky enough to have a mudroom with thingamajigs, believe it or not, if it's in the holiday season, you're spreading that holiday joy around. And that's why some people say, whoa, this is like something you can spread to other, and that's why people have parties, and I say, is it that the reason we do it? We're being influenced? And I say, no. This is a participatory thing. You're participating. These molecules are participating. Now, the molecules do need to participate to exist and multiply or even eject the SAT molecule. But that's how it comes down the chimney. And they say, oh, okay. If we were in the privileged place of getting holiday gifts, we say, well, who purchased it? Oh, no, Santa Claus brought them. Roberta Claus came last night down the chimney and brought these gifts here for you to play with. That's actually true. Well, who made these gifts? Oh, the elves in the North Pole made them. Actually true. Oh, well, last night Santa traveled across the globe and descended and went down chimneys almost everywhere. Again, we're dealing with physics. They say, well, it's not, or some people say, I'll pass on those molecules. Okay, understandable. And that's the great thing about the molecules. They're not going to make you participate. They say, oh, that person's activity level is different. Okay, we'll participate with them on their level. Or they say, oh boy, this 2020, we're going to have to participate with it on a 2020 level. We'll meet it where it is. But it answers a lot of these age-old questions with what you would call, if you lived in Scooter's imagination, facts, F-A, with a not spelled F-A, they say this is the layer of the sandwich you were never aware of till tonight. And you say, wait a second, this does answer every single question. I don't know if I could explain this. I can't explain it to myself. And I say, well, this one is here to keep you company. It's a layer of the sandwich you rest to. So, happy holidays and good night. All right. I want to thank everybody that became a patron recently. HJ, Scotty, and Shauna. Thank you. Thanks, and good night. SBR, Jean, and Allison. Thank you. Thanks, and good night. Catherine, Danielle, and Tyler. Thank you. Thanks. Good night. Jamie, Mary Ellen, and Marianne. Thank you. Thanks. Good night. Tracy, Tina, and Madeline. Thank you. Thanks. Good night. Jaime, Margaret R., and Margaret D. Thank you. Thanks. And good night. Mackenzie, Eutorius, and Jess. Thank you. Thanks. And good night. Denise, Ashley, and Colette. Thank you. Thanks. And good night. Ian, Tamara, and Claire. Thank you. Thanks. And good night. Joel, Rebecca, and Benjamin. Thank you. Thanks. And good night. Megan, Sam, and Joe. Thanks. And good night. Tamara, Danielle, and Princess. Thank you. Thanks. And good night. Sam, Joe, and Jenny. Thank you. Thanks. And good night. Sandra, Sarah, and Jillian. Thank you. Thanks. And good night. Russell, Camille, and Timothy. Thank you. Thanks. And good night. Niles, Jack, and Sarah. Thank you. Thanks. And good night. And Michael, Rudy, and Julie. Thank you. Thanks. And good night. Thanks to everybody who supports the show on Patreon. I really appreciate it. And those of you who support the sponsors, you both help us bring the podcast out for free. And those of you that spread the word, support the show, word of mouth, let people know in person or online. You're really how the podcast keeps growing. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, how do you want me to leave? Do you want me to turn the fan on or off? What's the temperature? How do you want me to deal? Okay. Just how you want it. How do you want the temperature? Done. Good night.